Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another FIFA 21 video where today we're going to be taking a look at the legendary 4-3-3 formation and how good this formation is this year in FIFA 21. Now this is not a super popular formation, it is not classed as a super meta formation, but it is a formation that I have seen a fair bit this year. Certainly you see this a lot more at the lower end of FIFA, maybe not so much at the upper end of FIFA because it is not a super meta formation. And obviously at the top end of FIFA, everybody's looking for the super meta players and the super meta formations, which is why you don't see this that much. But it is a formation that I do come across when I'm playing friendlies or, sometimes in rivals. It is a formation that is fairly common, in early games of champs as well. So I wanted to test it out, and I thought a good place to test it out was draft. I've actually had this 4-3-3 3 times in a row. This is actually the third time in a row I've had this formation in draft, 3 consecutive drafts, and I'm currently in the final with this formation as well. And having it for 3 drafts in a row has given me and experiencing different players in that formation has given me like a good knowledge of this formation and kind of what works well and what doesn't work so well in this formation. So in terms of tactics, I've decided to stay on balance for the defensive style. Now, I normally like to go on press on heavy touch or some sort of press. It doesn't really work in this formation because you have a flat midfield. The formations where press works really well in are formations that have a cam and a CDM because there's no lines in between. It makes it hard if your opponent to play out from your press. If there's a cam or a CDM in there, those lines sort of in between are more compact and it makes it more difficult for your players to get time and space on the ball. In this formation, because you have a flat midfield, you have like 3 strikers, you have a 3 flat in midfield and then your back 4. Everything's quite flat and quite simple and straight lines. So it can be a little bit too easy for your opponent. Once they get beyond the midfield, there's no CDM. Once they get beyond the strikers, there's no cam. So, there's time and space for your opponent. So press doesn't really work in this formation. So I decided to just stay on balance and just keep the team shape and not worry too much about trying to press and win the ball back quickly or in certain areas. Defensive width gone for around about 6. Just want those midfielders to be slightly wider. This defensive width kind of really talks more about the midfield more than any of the other positions. I think 6 width just kind of spreads those midfielders out a tiny little bit. If some people are playing with like a 4-2-2 or some wide cams or something, you can just kind of get across and cover those wide cams a little bit easier. Depth wise, staying on 6, which is why I stay on every formation. I use 6. I think that's not really to do with the formation. That's just personal preference, and that's what I like to play on. Offensive style, gone with long ball. I pretty much use this for all of my tactics, but it works really well in wing formations as well because those wingers like to make the runs, especially with our instructions, make those really sharp cutting runs in between like fullback and centre back, and they can be really difficult for your opponent to pick up. So long ball works super well. I don't think fast build up wouldn't work anyway. Again, not having a cam and a CDM in the team means fast build up would be really, really tricky anyway because link up play would be very difficult. So long ball it has to be. In terms of the offensive width, I've gone 4 as normal. When I go for wing formations or players that have wide players, always go for the 4 width because you need to get those wingers involved. I've just a slightly narrower starting position is just then the easiest way to get them involved. And then players in the box, corners and free kicks. Again, that is like the depth. That is just sort of not really formation based. That's kind of personal preference, and they're the ones that I like to stick to. Moving over to the instructions, goalkeeper, we've got Jan Oblak, got comes to crosses and sweep keeper. Again, pretty much standard for all the formations that we like to use. The defenders have gone for stay back while attacking. Again, in draft, you don't have to use stay back while attacking. I actually had them on stay back while attacking just for my last game because, as you saw, the result was 3-2. He was a really good player, so I had to have my fullbacks on stay back while attacking. But if you're playing draft, I like to play with my fullbacks on balance because draft it doesn't really matter. There's nothing really riding on it. You lose, you can just go straight back in, so it's not a big deal. So in draft, I like to go with my players on balance. But typically, if I'm just playing champs or something like that, if you wanted to take this formation like into competitive FIFA, if you wanted to take this into rivals or champs, you'd have to go with your fullbacks and stay while attacking. If you're someone who's going to use this like offline, maybe in squad battles, go for it. Go for it on balance. But I think if you're playing competitive FIFA, I always recommend having your fullbacks on stay back while attacking in any formation. If you're playing kind of like simple, easy, stress-free FIFA, like if I'm playing friendlies, if I'm playing squad battles, I always have my fullbacks on balance just because, you know, you don't really concede too many goals in those game modes. They're a lot more chill. Then moving on to the most central midfielder, which in this formation is Seedorf. Now, I changed the team in game. The players that I'm using are irrelevant. It's the instructions that are more important. We use Seedorf on drop between defenders. Now, I really like this for this 4-3-3. Now, you could have one of these guys on stay back while attacking instead, but I like him on drop between defenders because he then kind of acts like a CDM, and I think it's really tough to play FIFA without like a CDM. You need to have one of a CDM or a cam in FIFA. It's probably the biggest criticism I have of the 4-3-2-1. Again, that has a flat 3 in midfield. And the biggest issue with that formation is not having a CDM or a cam. You don't need to have both, but I feel like you need to have one or the other. And putting Seedorf on drop between defenders, he works super, super well. You know, sometimes when those fullbacks get a little bit higher at the pitch when they drift up naturally, the centre-backs like to split, and Seedorf can drop in there, and it kind of becomes a little bit of like a 5 in defence when your fullbacks do go forward a little bit. So I think that's really, really important. It works super, super well. Then the two outside midfielders, which we had Llorente and Milner, we just have them basically on standard. You know, we only changed to cover centre, but everything else is exactly the same because they are going to be box-to-box midfielders. Again, it's more important to know what sort of personnel you need. You need kind of box-to-box type midfielders because these guys are primarily going to be doing a bit of attacking and a bit of defending. You need to make sure they've got good sort of dribbling, decent shooting as well, because they do get into goal scoring opportunities, so they need to be able to finish off their chances. So that's something to bear in mind. But I found those two work really, really well. And you do need those guys to go forward because you do need that link up. You do need some guys travelling forwards to help the three up front, because if you have these guys on stay back while attacking, there's just such a disconnect between the midfield and strikers, and the strikers just become so isolated, and it can just become really, really difficult to play. Mbappe up top, stay central and get him behind. One thing I did try is this this central striker on false 9, so he kind of drop in and link up with that midfield. It depends on who you've got. You know, it doesn't work with someone like Mbappe. If you're gonna do that, you need to have somebody who's got really good passing and is really good on the ball, you know, good dribbling as well, because they're gonna need to be finding passes to the wingers, who are going to be, as you see in our instructions, the wingers are on cut inside and getting behind, and obviously having that narrow width. They're almost kind of like inside forwards, so they really make those really sharp runs inside, and again, pacey players as well. So that striker doesn't necessarily need to have pace, but if you're going to play with that false 9 technique, he needs to have good passing and dribbling, because he's going to be feeding passes through to those left and right wingers and those midfielders when they overlap and get forwards as well. Doesn't mean that occasionally you will get caught a little bit open on the counter-attack, because, you know, if those two midfielders are going forwards, it does mean that you've only got one midfielder back who's actually back as like almost like a third centre-back. So it's something to bear in mind if you are going to do that. But I found that just using him on stay central and getting behind was super effective. Just leaving that front three as a front three, you know, playing like a bit of a Liverpool style. This is basically how Liverpool play. So if you, or Barcelona teams gone by. So if you want to play that way, that's the best way to play. And these are the instructions that have worked. You know, the last two drafts that we've played with the 4-3-3, you know, we're lucky enough to have had this 3 times in a row, and we had 2 draft wins. I can see we're in the final, so we could maybe get 3 draft wins in a row. I've really enjoyed these tactics, and like I said, it's not the most meta. You know, I wouldn't say this is a meta set of tactics or anything like that. You know, I wouldn't say if you took these into champs or something, you'd be super, super successful, but they're fun to use if you want to use them in like stressless environment. You know, friendlies, squad battles, maybe you just play offline seasons or something. I don't know, but if you want to take them into competitive FIFA, I don't think they'll be the best. But if you want to play play them in the chill game modes, you know, like draft, like friendlies, I think they'll be very, very good and very fun, and just something different to use and experience in FIFA. But that's it for the video, guys. So if you did enjoy, do drop a thumbs up. Let me know how these tactics play for you if you did use them. Make sure you do subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. But that's all today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.